Super Spike VBall. Bump, set, spike, kaboom! And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
Okay, so last week we played a pinball game, and that was weird because we just played a pinball game right before that. Now volleyball's having a moment.
Yeah, and we kind of just played a volleyball game before that.
Absolutely true. And so we have to come up with 2 hours of content here about volleyball. Does anybody...
About like 30 minutes. Can we do 30 minutes?
I could do 30.
Yeah, we'll do times 0.25 speed.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
I think what helps this version of volleyball is that we don't need to know any athletes. In the last episode, we were really confused about who those guys were, or if they were even famous, or if people would have known about them. In this game, you just have to know Billy and Jimmy, who were the heroes of the Double Dragon series. They show up in this game, which is really freaking cool.
Oh, I didn't even notice that, but
it's like Easter egg stuff. It's not like you're not supposed to be like, oh, they have their Double Dragon powers. Like, no, they're just the same names. And I guess I don't really remember what they look like in the arcade or whatever, but I guess you if you played those games enough, you would make the connection that it's more than just the names, that they have the likeliness.
The likeness.
The likeliness. We're using my words.
It's very likely that they are Billy and Jimmy.
Yeah. You can't say with certainty that anything is anything.
Nothing is nothing, though. We all can agree on that. But volleyball.
Yeah. Well, so starting with just the fact that we've played volleyball games before, don't talk about this game. What are you looking for in a volleyball game? What's going to tease us a little bit? What would it take for a volleyball game to be on the Essential Games list?
I think it would have to be something along the lines of what I've talked about my brief tryst with Mario Tennis before on this podcast, and I think it would have to be something that adds enough flavor to such a simple game to hold my attention for hours on end. And that's something that Mario Tennis 64 or whatever did for tennis, and I haven't really come across that for volleyball yet. But I guess it's just like an expressiveness to the game that I would want.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say. I do think that it's possible for a volleyball game to do something that makes me want to put on the Essential Games list. I don't know what that is, though, is the problem. I feel like I'd know it when I'd see it. And if that doesn't spoil my Essential Games list vote for you, I don't know what will.
Right.
What about you, Mike?
Well, it's a funny question because it's mine and I only ask funny questions. I agree with Joe that I don't think I was I feel like I'm a little I'm not great at this show because I kind of hear that it's a volleyball game and my mind might as well be made up beforehand. And that's not the objective of this show. We're supposed to come in with no opinions. But I've played some volleyball games. I've played some risque volleyball games in my time in my video game career. And here we are with volleyball on the NES. And I'm kind of like, well, I've played volleyball on more advanced systems and I don't know, I hate to use that as a way to say no, it's not going to be essential because there's other iterations, but what could the basic version of volleyball do here to set itself apart from deeper, more interesting 3D versions of volleyball? And so I guess that's what we're going to have to get into now. But before we talk about any kind of gameplay, I want to talk about this character select screen.
Okay. Because
they give you you choose just one character and then they bring a teammate along.
Yeah, them and their
strange.
clone. I think they should have leaned into it and actually had this take place in the future where like even Chicago is sort of like in a tropical climate where, you know, everyone can always year round play beach volleyball shirtless. And there's cloning, and every top athlete has a clone as insurance for their career, and obviously they're also genetically modified to keep them in
insurance,
top.
though, if they're both playing in the games at the same time, I mean, they could both get injured.
I mean, I think the chances of them both being injured are lower than one person being injured.
Sure, but also if it's me and my clone are the team and my clone is my insurance, if I get injured, they still got to replace me because my clone is my teammate. He can't replace me and still be the teammate.
All right, you've got other clones in the bank.
Oh,
you know, like you've got probably a fridge somewhere that's got some at like various points in their gestation, you know? Like that's how it would work.
I gotcha. I think that even maybe the actual athlete is never even playing. It's all his clones. He's never even played volleyball.
I mean, that's the question, you know?
But this system where the character you choose just brings along a friend, right? Imagine a clone, sure. I mean, I get why you're saying clone because it is the same exact sprite on screen. But like what I'm saying here is, imagine if it was a story-based game, not a sports game, right? Where, like, you're choosing your main character in a JRPG quest, but they happen to also, like, bring along the only other member of your party. But you don't get to know any details about them or anything. They're just, like, they're in for the ride, and it turns out, like, the character you picked has all these great stats, but maybe their teammate doesn't. That's not the case here, because as Sean mentioned, it's just two clones, so it's the same person twice. But, like, the implication is bad. I think the implication's wrong.
I guess also to what you're saying, it's a missed opportunity to give you, the player, the option to be like, okay, I want to pick so-and-so because he's good at spiking, but then I want the other teammate to be good at defense. You know, it's like, no, you can have two players that are good at defense, or you can have two players that are good at, you know, attacking.
Well, there's also too small of a roster for, I think, those decisions to really make much of a difference. And I played as a few different variations, and I couldn't really, like, there might be a difference, but I couldn't find, like, it didn't feel crazy different. It's still the same experience.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, I'm not sure what difference there was in any of these, other than, like, some of the AI that you're playing against was just harder. But I didn't think like, oh, these guys their defense is great. Like, I never thought like that before.
On the character select screen for Al, one of the characters you can choose to be, he has just a different color text from the rest of the screen on his letter U in the word you. Is that symbolic of anything? Should we be reading into that?
I like this. Have we ever talked about something like this before?
It's not like, oh, the rest of it's red and this is purple, or, you know, something like that. Just
this is
subtle.
This is the
it's
developers
a subtle
talking
color
to us. This is a sign.
Yeah. It's a cry for help. Yeah.
Also, in the character select screen, you have the unusual ability to select your state as well. The stages in the game are Daytona Beach, New York City, Chicago, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles, and then eventually there's the World Cup as well. But the state you select, as far as I know, doesn't matter at all.
No, I think it's just for customization purposes.
But is it ever mentioned in the game? Like, oh, and here they are from New York, the boys.
I think when you win, it tells you, like, oh, that was this team from Alaska.
Yeah, it, like when you win the final thing, it says like, yeah, great job, New York, or whatever. Like,
right. I guess at that point, just like let me choose my last name.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess if you're doing like an American tour or whatever you call it, like, it's cool to be like, oh, I'm picking my state, or I'm just picking a state to be from. Like, you are. There's American cities that you're going to, so it's like, oh, okay, I get to pick the American state that I'm from.
Yeah, but assume that you picked the state that you're from, and you're the one doing all the controlling, and you win the tournament, and then it presents it like it's two other guys that you are not, that won the tournament, and they're also from New York. It's like, oh, there's 2 guys better than me in my state, but I'm the one who did all the work.
Wait,
that's how I feel watching the Olympics.
But you're the one doing all the work in the Olympics. We know.
Yes.
Yeah, you're the one watching.
My tax dollars paid for their vacation to Sochi.
But when you say 2 other people, are you talking about the 2 characters that you were playing as?
Yeah, because like you're not them. You know, like I'm saying, like that's what I'm saying. Like take your last name instead as the character selection thing, not like the
so
state.
They're at least like your distant cousins.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's like they're your rivals,
clone twin cousins.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a stretch. I agree.
I got nothing.
Yeah. So we're talking about the gameplay now because I decided that it's time for that section. And there's a lot of controls here, actually. I thought the game was kind of simple at first before I looked at the manual, and I was just like, all right, cool. You can jump and spike, or you can just volley the ball back to the other you and do it that way. But like, no, there's a lot of options here, and I guess like they will come into play the longer, you know, like as the computers get smarter and your reflexes need to be faster. But when you start this game, you don't need to know any of that.
No, it's very it's very simple. It's easy to get a hang of. One is like, you know, interact with ball, and one is jump, and the different like directional inputs that you can use while using those buttons kind of gives you all the effects that you need, and timing with jumps and spikes has a pretty insane effect on things. I was actually surprised early when I was playing the game. I was like, okay, bump, set, and spike, and then bump, set, and spike, and that was just sort of like, okay, I'm kind of getting bored at this, and but then I realized that like you don't really need to wait for the ball to get to a certain point spiking. Like you could have it like bump, set, spike, and you could kind of get a big kaboom effect, and the player flies back, and it is a little bit of that like expressiveness that I was talking about in what I'm looking for in these simpler sports games. I don't know how you guys felt about that.
But it does still need, you do still need to like, it is unforgiving in the way that like you're lined up. It doesn't like give you any help of like, oh, you almost hit the ball, so we're gonna hit the ball. Like I noticed that right away. I noticed what you're talking about too, where you can like time it in different ways. But you can easily whiff on the ball.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that is, I don't remember if we kind of had a control scheme like this in other volleyball games, but it's just because there's a separate button for jump and then interact with the ball. So you have to jump, and then when you're lined up perfectly to where you want to be, where the ball is close enough to you, whatever, then you hit the button to spike. And I feel like because of that made it feel more satisfying to actually do it. And also like, it more like it takes more skill than like there just being a spike button. Or I feel like in one of them we had like A and B is the spike button or something like together. Whereas like this is like, no, I'm actually, it feels a little more related to volleyball because I'm actually having to time it like I would have to if I was using my actual arm on an actual ball.
Yeah, it feels like there's a bit of a higher skill ceiling than what I would have expected with the simplicity of the controls.
Right, and what Sean was saying with the kaboom, like there's a whole like flair there to this game with the whop and kaboom and stuff that like actually appears on screen as you're hitting. That makes it a little, fun and arcadey, but at the same time, with the skill ceiling. But this game also has the ability to make you feel really cool and then immediately really uncool when you do like the kaboom, right? And it's like, wow, look at that, like. This is fast action. Like, that's me. I'm doing that stuff. And then to Joe's point, like, when you whiff, like, when you just don't time correctly and you swing too early and then the ball just falls into the sand. It's like it feels really bad, and it's there's no more visual flair for that kind of thing that happens. It just feels like the whole world paused and watched you fail when you whiff.
I think that's supposed to be that way.
Absolutely.
I would want that.
Well, I don't know if I would want that, but I think that's effective game design. That like
no,
1 minute you're having fun,
that.
and then the next minute you're in timeout.
Well, even when you get hit with the ball, like if someone uses that kaboom move and it hits you, like there's a knockdown, like little bit of time where you got to get up and get to the ball while your partner's setting it. Like that adds a little bit to it as well.
But it feels so easy early on that I felt like, provided I was just timing my jumps and my spikes correctly, the rest of the game was this weird autoplay where as long as I was spamming the A button before the opponent even returned the ball over to me, because your players don't do anything when the ball isn't like in their vicinity, it seemed like the players just automatically targeted and volleyed the ball, which is like bad practice for what eventually happens in the game where you need to be more reflexive and fast-paced.
Sometimes you almost got to be like preemptive.
Right.
Like, at least maybe me. Like I felt like I had to try and figure out, okay, where are they going to hit this now and kind of get in position.
Yeah, you got to worry about spacing. Like the good thing is, and it's definitely a frustration saver, is it doesn't matter which of your clones they spike it at. If you hit the interact button, they will like set it or attempt to, at least if you're nearby. But you still need to worry about your spacing so that there isn't just a wide open part of the sand that is just open for them to spike it at.
Yeah. One thing, though, that did throw me off kind of about that at first, and granted I got used to it, is that like if the ball is going towards the player that you're not playing as at the moment, sometimes, or maybe all the time, you just switch to controlling that person.
Yeah, like that's sort of what I meant.
Yeah, that actually kind of bugged me at first because I would be actively controlling the other guy, trying to get him to a position just because, like, just out of instinct, because that's the person I'm controlling. And then suddenly in the middle of me controlling him, now I'm controlling the first guy because he's closer to the ball or something, but I'm already pushing the D-pad in one direction, so he just goes the wrong way or something. I did get used to it after a while. It became like kind of just intuitive of like who I was going to be controlling. But at first, that was really a little jarring. It just felt like without any control or input of my own, it was just like, all right, now you're playing this guy.
Yeah, but I think it needs to be that way, just because imagine a scenario where it's like the floating 1P over your head and you have to hit like select to change between the two. We've seen that in like ways to control football teams in NES games or even just other video games where like you switch between which character you want to play before the hike, right? It wouldn't work here in this volleyball game, and so I never really considered the other option until Sean brought it up, that like there could be a world where you just play as one of them and the computer is the other, and that would feel really bad when the computer messes it up because you have no role in that, and shouldn't the computer just be perfect? So I think it's really smart of them in the long run, especially knowing how twitch reflexy the game gets, that it's worth it so that the game kind of decides for you like who you are. Now maybe they should have like figured out a way to like maybe that person glows or something. I feel like that would be distracting to see that switch, especially because this isn't like volleyball where the ball is like high up in the air and you wait for it to come back down and then you hit it high up in the air and the opponent has to like chase after it. Like this ball is returning back and forth pretty fast, and for the most part, at least in my gameplays, there isn't really such a thing as volleying. Like there might be like an exchange back and forth like twice or 4 times max, and then like someone's gonna score.
Yeah, and one thing I will note, just in sports games in general, where there is this ambiguity of who would be receiving a pass or who's going to intercept. And then this switch in control, like this is still a problem in sports games. Like it's always going to be kind of an annoyance. And so it's not just this old volleyball game that suffers.
To go back to presentation, because we were really just talking about fun 1960s Batman-style words popping up on the screen when you hit the ball, there is a lot of other, like the locations are really fun and they change, but also the score is ever present in the middle of the screen. There's a woman who will like announce that somebody got a point or that it went out or something like that. And
she's a great woman.
Yeah, she's a great woman for many reasons. I'm not going to list them off here. But to get back on track, I'm just saying, like, realistically, like, the presentation stuff is both, like, it's flair, but it also, like, it reads really well. Like, I think even though they're doing this somewhat scrolling with the ball, like, they can't show the whole court, I never felt like I wasn't able to see what was coming, which is hard to do when a screen scrolls. A lot of times in other games, we'll complain that, oh, well, I didn't know that enemy was right there, until the screen scrolled over and showed it. So with the ball, like, traveling as fast as it is, but it's still, like, communicating, pretty okay. I didn't get, like, to the end stages. I don't know how fast the ball can travel.
I think it helps. Changes. I think it helps that at any point you can see pretty much, like, 75% of the screen. So a lot of that movement is just kind of, I think, to add some dynamicism to this. I'm thinking about playing the game fully zoomed out with an the backgrounds aren't really animated all that much, and then there's no camera movement at all. I think it would feel a little stale. I think it just adds a little bit to the energy of the game.
Yeah, you're right too. I think the way that the scrolling works too, it scrolls with the ball when it goes from side to side. So it actually adds some motion to the hit, as if you feel the ball traveling. Whereas I feel like the other like tennis games have never done that and probably wouldn't be able to or whatever, but they could certainly give it a try. I'd be down for it. They don't communicate that speed, or the speed is too fast because everything is motionless, so you're not tracking with the ball. We have a tournament mode in this game. We see this a lot in these, like, more, I don't know, the ones that are the sports that aren't the four major leagues. Like when you start to get to, like, golf or tennis or volleyball or dodgeball, it's like, yeah, let's just throw in, like, a tournament mode. That's the mode that you get to to do, like, a campaign of sorts. Whereas like in baseball or football, it's like, play a full season as this team. Why do you think they don't do that in these kinds of games? Why does it always go down to, like, a tournament?
Well, I don't really know if there's really a volleyball season with a set schedule that eventually ends in a playoff to win the Stan Lee Cup. I think this is more how these, like, I guess this is doubles volleyball, but it's kind of more of a single sport, and you don't really see that kind of season playoff dichotomy in these. So I think it's just the way it is.
Yeah, this is probably just, like, the way more people know of volleyball. Like, more people are probably just like, even if there is a league or something, it's not like the NHL or the NFL or anything where it's like everybody watches this. Everybody knows this. It's like, people, I don't know, it's probably just like what people are familiar with.
Right. And I'm not saying that they should follow, like, they should make a full season, like 162 games of volleyball before you get to the playoffs or anything. But it's like, if an NHL game, right, just started with the playoffs, right? So it was just the tournament portion of it. Shouldn't there be, like, I guess, like, exhibition modes can kind of be like that, but just games that you can play where it's like, I want to win these games, right? Like, exhibition modes are very hard for me to care about winning, but, like, in a season mode kind of thing, it's like, yeah, I want to win this game, but I don't need to win every game consecutively to keep playing, whereas tournament mode is you lose one, you're out.
I guess it would have to be maybe more of, like, a Gran Turismo style, like campaign where there are tournaments and you might lose one, but then you take some winnings or whatever the currency for progression is in these games, and then you move on to the next one. It's just a bunch of tournaments.
Yeah, and you use your cash to buy new volleyballs and new swim suits and stuff.
I would. Hey, you're selling me. It sounds like a game that I've already played.
But you buy new volleyballs. Does that imply that that one of the teams gets to pick which volleyball you use in the game? There's two teams.
Yeah, that's sort of like you flip a coin, and whoever wins gets to kick off.
Do the balls have different stats and stuff too? Like, oh, this one's got really high wind resistance.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I'm really upset that they didn't put into the game is the coin toss. They forgot to include that in the game, so we don't know whose ball we're playing with.
True.
That's true.
I think it's just a ball that they found on the sand. Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't even like a tournament or anything. This is just people playing volleyball on the sand.
And a bunch of people just came to watch.
Yeah. And you notice, speaking of the crowd, every city that you go to, at least in the American cities, they each have a little thing about, Chicago has some bears in the stands, even though that's not the same sport. And then they have it says pizza because they have pizza. Chicago,
we have good food.
Dish pizza. Yeah, we have New York. It just says good food, like advertising for just general good food.
I'm not gonna complain.
But then sometimes the people can be weird too, not just the locations itself. But I've been to Hawaii for my honeymoon, and I've been to beaches in
Congrats,
Hawaii.
Mike.
Thank you. I've been to beaches on Hawaii, and I have never seen people show up in top hats to the beach to watch a tournament.
Maybe they're sun hats.
I'd like to believe that. I don't think it's true. They all look like they're wearing suits. Are they the press?
This is gonna sound really stupid, but is there a sailboat? What is right next to the scoreboard to the right?
Yeah, that's a sailboat. That's got to be.
Okay, because when I look at it, when I see it on my peripheral, I think there's a giant toucan sitting there.
I like that better. A giant, that's.
I don't have this in front of me, so I can't comment. I feel like
it's
our
100%
listeners right now.
a sailboat.
But it doesn't look like it's in the water. Okay, so it's on the beach.
Does it have what color is it, guys?
Well, no, it's weird. It's shaded the same color as the people.
So it's
made
a
out of
skin
human
boat.
flesh.
Huh. Okay, speaking of content, I my typical very in-depth research for these games is I look at the Wikipedia page, which I don't think a lot of people think to do. And for this game, it actually had a little section for a piece of cut content, and that was female teams, and which is kind of notable because there's a woman on the cover for the game, and I guess maybe that's just your person that the very great woman that calls out of bounds and stuff. But there's no female teams. It's just a bunch of big burly muscle dudes.
And I wonder how much that's actually cutting that mode. Is it just sprite swap anyway? So
it's not a mode. It's just more teams.
But do you think they really would have let them play against the men?
I mean, regardless, there was it's apparently it might be cut content, but that data is still on the cart. So
I mean that's my point. Is what would be the point of cutting that?
I think the point of cutting it is that the image of a bikini-clad woman is a bit too much for the Nintendo audience, I guess.
Have you seen the woman who's announcing the points?
I know, but this is full body, even though it's less detailed. But being the in-depth researcher that I am, I put the Game Genie code in to unlock these teams, and they're actually they're fully animated. You could play as they don't have a character select page. It's all just sort of garbled garbage. But like they've got, and when you win and sort of celebrate, that just glitches out too. But when you're playing the game, like there is a sprite for every frame, and I don't know. I just thought that was interesting.
Maybe they were saving it for a sequel. They were withholding it so they could make more money on a sequel.
You're right.
DLC.
I guess we'll wait for Mike to get the sequels and spin-offs.
Yeah. After the Central Games vote.
That's a great callback, Joe. I was wondering, Sean, if in your research you also noticed that this game was not called Super Spike VBall.
Yes. That was... you actually told us about this game using the Japanese title, and so so it was kind of hard for me to find it at first. But yeah, it's what is it again?
U.S. Championship V-Ball, which again,
Yes.
like, at that point, just say volleyball, okay? Like United States Championship Volleyball, just do it.
United States of America Championship Volleyball video game for the NES.
Yeah, actually, Joe, that's a great segue for a second. What makes people decide U.S. versus USA? What is the deciding factor there? Like, why would they not just say USA Championship Volleyball?
I don't know. Maybe they pay by the letter.
Well, U.S. Championship V-Ball, as we're forced to call it by Technos Japan, was an arcade game first. I guess this is sequels and spin-offs in a way. We're just talking about the first game. And you know, it's basically the same game, but obviously like the graphics are better and everything. But there's a lot of like parodies in the locations that you go to and stuff like that. So in the New York one, you could see the Statue of Liberty and the Empire State Building in great detail in the background, and the people aren't wearing suits, and they look like people who say, "I'm walking here," even though there's no beach. Like I guess they're on Coney Island. But I don't think you can.
You gotta go with the Rockaways, man.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. I guess like we did this on another episode too, where we discussed like the skyline and where they are, and it just doesn't make any freaking sense.
Yeah, they're at like the tip of. They're like in Dumbo or something.
Yeah, right.
Even though there's no bridges.
Yeah. But anyway, pretend that they put a bunch of sand in Dumbo and just went for it. The parody that I like the most is Bug Light, like it's BUG. And they put it as like a little sign, as if it's the sponsor, but then there's just a giant can of it too, of Bug Light. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, is that like specifically a New York thing, or is that like, are they a sponsor the whole time? Like, Bug Light, like, is that even funny enough on its own? Like, what's the
it's
parody?
It's about the cockroaches, Mike.
I guess bed bugs maybe, who knows? But
yeah.
Yeah, I think you came the closest to selling me on why, because like it's not funny on its own, right? Bug Light, like that's just like potty humor. But
and honestly, it's kind of a stretch to think that like it's specifically about cockroaches. Like, I'm just trying to add to the conversation here. I just appreciate you giving me a moment to speak. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Mike.
You want to talk about the game we're supposed to be talking about a little more?
Okay.
Because I have
go for it.
I have an anecdote that it's been a while since we've done Joe's pause sounds, but I don't know if you guys noticed that when you try to pause this game like during play, it just like honks at you like a car horn, and it doesn't pause.
I kind of like that.
Did anyone
think I tried to do that?
It just goes, but like nothing pauses, nothing happens.
It's acknowledging that you're trying to game the system and laughing at you for it.
Where do you fall on that pause, though, Joe? Like, are you appreciative that you're not allowed to pause mid-play, or do you think you should, as a video game, you should always be able to pause at any second?
I mean, I wouldn't hate in this, like, if you couldn't pause, which you can't, but, like, if you can't pause, like, in mid-play, I get that. I also think that, like, I've seen it where it's, like, maybe you can pause, but the ball and the players disappear, so you can't like sit there and study like, okay, what's my next move?
That's a pretty good compromise. I think I'm fine with it not being able to pause. Like,
each volley is short enough where it's like it's not like, unless like, you know, I mean, I'm imagining though, like my parents never understood if they were calling me, like, and I was like, I just 1 second, I just spent so much time on this boss battle, I just have to save it or whatever. They're like, no, you listen to us. And I'm like, you don't understand. Listen. So like I get that element of it if you're a kid playing.
Sean, any thoughts on pausing?
Oh, no, I'm not the one with the pause segment.
Oh, right. Sorry, duh. Okay, wait. How about any thoughts on the World Cup mode? Because it's a little different than the U.S. Championship, because now you're going up against the big guns, Japan, Italy, Australia, the U.S. Navy,
Wait,
the USSR.
I did
Is that
not.
what it says? Specifically the Navy?
The Navy, yes.
Huh.
I find that hard to believe, but I'm just going to believe you because I didn't play too much of the World Cup mode.
It's fun. I think, like, you know, the World Cup is an interesting concept when the Navy and the Soviets get involved. But yeah, like it starts off pretty strong. Japan, Italy, Australia, Mexico, Brazil. The U.S. Navy is the curveball, but I didn't get there either. But if I'm just from reading the game FAQs portion of like their guide, either that guy wasn't too good at playing the game, which I find hard to believe if he wrote a whole guide about it, or once you get to the U.S. Navy section of the game, it just becomes so hard that it's like good luck.
I guess that follows.
The Navy is perfect. They
Navy
own the sea.
They own the sea. They have a lot of free time to play volleyball on. Like, what is that? Why the Navy?
Is that a commercial for the Navy? Like,
are the other countries' navies playing, or are you just playing against like their top athletes?
That's a good question. Maybe that plays into the deep lore of like the cloning situation.
Yeah, it was like a Navy funded program that.
Right. Yeah, the Navy reveals it.
Are they in uniform? Because I didn't play.
I didn't get to the Navy either. I'm sure that they are in uniform though, if they went through the trouble of announcing them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if you know it's the US Navy, it's like the USSR one is even more extreme in its visuals, and in fact it was so extreme that they cut it down a little bit for the American one, from the Japanese one, because the Japanese one was a little more like anti-USSR, which is funny because I feel like that would have been fine, right, to do that in the US version too. Nobody would have hated that here, but they chose to strip it down anyway. I can't get an answer for you on the US Navy if they show up or not. So
wait, so what's so bad about the Soviet one?
So Sean, you found it?
The American version.
What's it look like?
Just some, bald, pale Russian men, very muscly. They're wearing Speedos.
I get the muscle part for the Russians and everything, but like, where does the bald come into play? Is there like some famous bald people from Russia, or was it like a decree that you had to be bald? Like, don't they want some hair? Aren't they like kind of in a cold area, cold climate?
I mean, when I think of somebody named Vladimir, I think bald.
Bald.
Maybe it's the Lenin thing. Lenin was pretty bald.
See, when I'm thinking of like this, like a video game like USSR character, I'm thinking of that. What's that guy from Rocky with that like flock of seagulls? What is Flock of Seagulls haircut? What is that?
It's a lot more like feathered.
Oh, then that's not what I'm thinking of. What's the one where it's like flat on top, but it like kind of like spikes?
Yeah, like the high and tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know my hairstyle.
In this game,
I get it.
You can play with 4 players using their NES multi-tap. I suppose I have a hypothesis that the real game is the cooperation between 2 players.
That's the game we played along the way.
That, you know what I'm saying? It's like when you play this game, where we started at the beginning of the episode, where like wherever the ball is, you just become that person. Mm-hmm. That's like, that's a way to smooth out the gameplay because you're lonely and you don't have friends and you have to play by yourself. But the real game is probably when like you and a friend have to like work together to be like, all right, you take the front, I'll take the back, and then they don't trust you, so they come up to the front too, but the ball goes to the back, and you're like, what the hell?
Like real volleyball.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Like that. The way that you and the computer play is more like, you have all this coverage and you can decide on the fly what you're gonna do. You can't do that with a friend.
Yeah, less Madden, more Overcooked.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Sean, how does multiplayer work in Madden? Do you get to like one person be the QB, the other person be the linebacker?
I guess I meant more so like in Madden, you being every character or every player. But yeah, there is a cooperative multiplayer mode in Madden where it would be like quarterback, wide receiver, or quarterback, running back. It's, everyone just wants to be the quarterback, but it's sort of like a Sonic and Tails situation.
So you're telling me that Madden in 2023 doesn't have like you remember that game? It was like Mag, where it was
like 200
256 players and stuff, and that was like what they were boasting about. Madden doesn't have an online mode where you create a character and you just choose to be this guy, and then you can do like, how many people are on the field at once, Sean?
Yeah, there's 256 players on each team on the field at a time.
There's two exactly.
There is, I think you can have like 4 players, and like there's 2 on D, 2 on offense.
There are 256 quarterbacks on the field at all times.
But in all honesty, in seriousness though, like if you're looking for a quote unquote real sports game that does a fully like player team situation, that's NBA 2K. Like that is partly like the main mode of the game is like playing pickup games with people on like an impromptu, on a digital playground, basically.
I get that because everybody gets to feel good and put the ball in the net.
Well, only the ones that play the game too much really can do that.
Sure, but it's
in
not
theory,
like,
yes.
You remember that episode of Hey Arnold where they're all just told to pass the ball
to Tucker.
Yeah. Like, because his dad's the coach. It's like that doesn't happen in a game of NBA 2K. And it probably wouldn't happen in Super Spike VBall, where you just be like, all right, I'm gonna return all the volleys. Like, you just hang out. Like, you can't do that in this game.
It's true.
The arcade version also had like little cutscenes in between the matches where it shows the characters, like, first they go to a car dealership and purchase a vehicle, and then like as it goes by, like the car gets better and better.
Is this like Gran Turismo?
Well, yeah, Gran Turismo, the movie, the game.
Yes.
But did you miss the cutscenes? They removed them.
I think I would appreciate the cutscenes, but it's not a deal breaker.
I would appreciate the cutscenes only if they showed you going back to the state you chose on the state select screen. And doing state-related things.
Yeah, like you should have to like walk through Manhattan to get to the beach. Depending on, like, you should have like a whole, like, an apartment and stuff if you pick New York.
Yeah, you should be able to like decorate your apartment.
Yeah, it should be The Sims.
Yep.
Only if you pick New York.
Yeah, if you pick California, you just are on the streets.
Yeah,
I mean, if you pick U.S. in the World Cup, you have to like be in the Navy. You have to you get in a submarine.
It's a shooter now.
Yeah.
You have to beat 1942 before you can play the World Cup mode on this game. All right, no, never mind. Fuck it. That wasn't funny.
I
laughed. So yeah, we talked about the game. Now we're gonna talk about whether it goes on a little something I call the essential games list. I call it that, but do you guys?
I call it party dream time. The episode's almost over.
I've never spoken about it out loud by referencing it by the name I call it.
Right. It's actually unpronounceable, the name you've given it.
Yeah, it used to be in the old tongue.
Well, to get back on topic, my vote for Super Spike VBall, I started this episode being like, well, I'm not really sure if I could ever put a volleyball game on the essential games list, not because of any good reason, just because it's like when I hear volleyball game, it's like, well, that's just not my kind of game. And yeah, I still feel like this isn't my kind of game, but I think they put down a pretty good game here. It's such a good game, we're gonna cover it again when we get to Super Spike VBall / Nintendo World Cup. It's a 2-pack, so we have to we have to recover that. And we'll find, I feel like we should have saved some of
We
our
haven't had a
jokes.
2-pack in a while.
Yeah, I thought we should have probably saved some of our jokes, though, for that episode. We'll come up with new material, though. We always do. And they came up with a lot of, a lot of ways to separate themselves from the other volleyball game that we just played on the NES that is so boring that its name is escaping me. Kings of the Beach is the name of the game. But, that's how boring that was. They tried to put in, real celebrity athletes. And even that, I feel like when you do something like that, it's almost like an act of desperation. Your game's not good, but it was endorsed by somebody who is good at volleyball, who won't play your game. Super Spike VBall needed none of that. Has a lot of good flair. Has a pretty, how do I put this? A pretty mundane tournament system, but the locations are fresh and it keeps, I don't know, it changes just enough, but the obviously the gameplay loop of volleyball can't change. It's not like they're going to introduce and here's a new scoring technique when you get to, the Italy match, right? All of a sudden the whole way of how volleyball is played is different. It's no, you're not expecting that in these kind of games. But I think I was expecting a little more from just the characters you play as, or especially just the clone situation. I really think that they should have made it so that you pick 2 different types of characters to have a a triangle system. We're always talking about triangles in Nintendo games. They made a whole game about it, Project Triangle Strategy. They could have had something where it was offense is good for this, defense is good for that, and technical is good for this, and those 3 kind of work in a triangle thing. So you could never have all 3, but you could have 2 of them, and that would be good enough. So I guess what I'm saying is it's not a bad game at all, but it's also not good enough to be pushed over the edge into the essential games list. This was a really roundabout way of saying that I'm impressed, but not impressed enough. Sean?
Yeah, I do like this game more so than Kings of the Beach, and I do think that it offers a lot of the things that I'm looking for in a game like this. Like I said at the top of the episode, just I could use a little bit more goofball energy. I could use a little bit more fun and put it in space. Give me some wacky super moves like in dodgeball, where you can sort of control where the ball goes in wild ways, and if it's a game like this, it's got to have some cartoon energy, and this does to some extent. But if you want to get on the essential games list, you got to pull out all the stops. But yeah, a fun game, not essential.
Joe.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's all right.
I was like, oh, I
it was
think
a very
I say
long
it.
pause, so I was like, maybe I'm just supposed to go.
This is wild.
I don't know. I need direction.
Oh yeah. For this one, you're supposed to vote no.
Oh shit! Now I have to vote yes just to prove to everybody that I won't be bought. No, this is a good volleyball game. I really honestly don't have too much more to say about it than that. I think this vote sort of has shades of last week's vote for Rollerball, where it's kind of yeah, this is good, but to me, it's just going to blend into all the rest of the games, other volleyball games. Yes, that whatever that other volleyball game we played was this is better than that. But it's not doing anything where I'm oh, this is the volleyball game you have to play. It's fine. It's a good game. Also not essential.
So that's 3 not essentials. Don't worry. If anybody has their doubts, Joe is not bought. At least not by me. I don't know if some of our Patreon listeners are paying him extra on the side, which is stupid because they're already paying for the show. You shouldn't be paying Joe. And then if you're listening for free and you're wait a minute, people are paying for the show. It's yeah, shame on you for not paying for the show. We're giving it out for free, but there is an expectation that you're going to give us something.
No.
Bread in the mail is good.
Yeah. We're kind of doing a sponsorship thing. You can sponsor my Monday meals by, subscribing and
I think it's
money.
more that you sponsor me for $5 for every mile of podcast that I do.
Right. If we took the tape,
minute to mile ratio there.
Oh, it's not. It's different for every. It just depends on how, how fast each game is moving us. I'm just saying words.
So tape minutes to mile. I will get back to you because I'm pretty sure that is a thing. At least for film. So I don't know what the audio translation is. If it matters, but we record digitally, so it's all gigabytes. What's the gigabytes to miles?
If every byte was lined up end to end, how far would it go?
There you go. Yep.
For the entire podcast?
What's the size of a byte,
three times.
We're saying a lot of things.
Oh, that wasn't the end?
No.
All right.
Oh, here's the end. Do you guys know what the inside of a Kit Kat is between the wafers?
Not nougat?
It's crushed up Kit Kat bars.
Da-na-na-na-na-na.
That's true. Isn't that actually really weird? Like, who made the first Kit Kat bar and how? Doesn't it also kind of make you a little sick? It's like a little bit like Soylent Green, like Discovery. You're like, oh, the inside of Kit Kat bars is just like defiled Kit Kat bars.